Well, get rolling. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. My name is Brian Cutler. I am the program director for the media psychology program at Fielding Graduate University. So, welcome to our information session. We run a series of information sessions. Some are specifically about our master's program in media psychology, some are specific about our doctoral program in media psychology, and some are topical. They're about media psychology topics and people. And that's what we're going to do today. If you are interested in one or more of our programs, I'll invite you to attend one of those sessions. They should be on our web where you can find the date and time and URL. But I'll also stick around for a few minutes after this session to answer any questions that you have. So today, my guest is Angel Burns. Angel is a student in our graduate program, and you're going to learn a lot about her. And I also want to invite you to meet Angel and to ask Angel questions that come up for you as we go along about Angel's very interesting past, about her present experience at Fielding in our media psychology program, and about her future, which I'm very interested in learning about. So, Angel, welcome and thank you for being
Thank
here.
you. Thank you very much, Brian. Appreciate it.
So, I thought I would sort of divide up my questions regarding the pre-Angel, the Angel before she joined the media psychology program, the current Angel, what her experiences in the program, and then what Angel's vision for her future is. So, Angel, why don't you start and tell us about you personally and professionally, and who were you before you joined Fielding?
Well, I would imagine, like our three viewers we have on this recording, I was a curious person. I grew up with a very unusual background on the grounds of a state mental hospital, where my father was the lead psychiatrist. So I spent 15 years living with among mental patients, as well as the hospital was an international teaching facility. So I was also exposed to multiple cultures, the doctors, their children, multiple faiths. So that was my background that led me to become a pre-med student. I was also going to go into psychiatry, but I was
Mhm.
also a lifelong performer. I started as a dancer, an actor, a model, spokesperson, and I did that on the East Coast most of my life from a very young age. I did plays, commercials, industrial films, anything I could do on that coast, with a vow that I would move to Los Angeles and work here. And eventually I became a film producer, among other things. But back to the state hospital and that upbringing, that led me to, while I was an actor, refusing to wait tables, the classic day job.
Mhm.
Instead, I worked at mental hospitals. I worked at psychiatric facilities. So I was a lower level nurse and then a mental health worker for CD rehab, eating disorders, women's abuse shelters, locked units. That's what I did for years in psychology, as well as working as an actor and producer for many years. So Fielding was the first thing to come along that made sense of my crazy background, no pun intended. I could take what I knew both instinctively from my childhood and experientially from work and marry that with my interest and love of the movies.
Mhm.
Media psychology was something that didn't exist when I was a kid. And now it seems to be relevant to almost everything. So for all of you watching, I would say you could take your particular interest in media and marry it to psychological foundations that make sense of it all. And so that's what I've been learning in Fielding. I've been doing research on facets of great movies. What is it about a movie that you love, that lights you up, that you think of at night, you think of when you're driving? What is it about your very favorite movies that connects to human psychology so that we can create better movies, which to me is a win-win. So I can consult with movie studios and I can say, here's what it would take to make your movie better.
Hmm.
And I'm selfish. So it's better for me as an audience member, but it's also better for the studios because if the audiences are happy, they're going to see it again, they're going to tell people, and they're going to make more money. So that's why I say it's a win-win. So I have been studying here at Fielding all kinds of facets of audience satisfaction and psychological needs that are addressed by movies. And what I want to say is the opportunities here to round out that experience are pretty myriad and deep. You can go as deep as you would like to. I've even done independent studies for a term that have given me new insights. So that's a little of the before, a little taste of the current. And going forward, I am now have been for many years involved as a voter in the movie industry. So I vote for the Screen Actors Guild Awards. I vote for the Independent Spirit Awards. And I host the Academy screenings of films for all of the guilds. So Producers Guild, Writers Guild, Actors Guild, everybody involved in the industry that votes for the Academy Awards. I am part of the host, I wouldn't say committee, society for those screenings. And I also do interviews with filmmakers and talk about what they're going to do next. So as far as me after Fielding, with a media psychology PhD, you can not only do research, but you can publish, you can speak, you can consult, teach, share your knowledge in lots of different ways while continuing to add to it. So it's all fun, folks.
You have so much richness in your experience, and I can see you're in demand. I can think of a ton of questions, and I will ask you some. But let me stop for a moment and see if any of our guests in our audience have any questions for Angel.
I'm wondering what their particular interests are in media that brought them here. Maybe
Any of our guests like to join the conversation? And feel free to put comments and questions in chat also. Well, we'll come back to you if you think of anything you'd like to add. Please join our conversation. So, Angel, I'm going to back up a bit and talk about psychology and your work in the performing arts. So, you were exposed to a lot of psychology, given your father's role as a psychologist, given your residential situation, and then given the jobs that you held while you were performing on the East Coast. In what ways is the psychology that you were exposed to similar or different from the psychology that you're learning and doing in media psychology?
Well, I would say that the psychological needs are the same. For instance, there's studies, foundation of theory that our basic psychological needs are autonomy, competence, and belonging. And those needs inform a lot of behavior. So for instance, at Fielding, I've been studying how the need to belong drives the success of a lot of movies. And it's not just sitting in a theater or sitting at home with your friends watching the movie, it's what is depicted in the movie. So I found at my most recent research that movies with empowerment themes, universal themes as well, but Empowerment of an underdog. Everybody at some point in their life feels like an underdog for some reason. It could be a stereotype, it could be racial discrimination, it could be like in the King's Speech, which won an Oscar, a stutter of a king. No matter who you are, somebody at some point has felt left out, marginalized, misunderstood, and the need to belong drives our interest in watching those stories, because at the end of the movie, no matter who wins or loses, the audience feels, if they relate to that character as an underdog, they feel a sense of belonging, a sense of shared humanity, because they know lots of people are watching this movie and may gain understanding of that character's plight, no matter what, and certainly of their feelings. And by connecting to a shared humanity, the movie satisfies our need to belong, our need to connect with people, relate to people, whether it's friends, family, or just society that may not get us.
Can you give us a few more examples? Talk us through a movie or two, and how the theme of belongingness fits in and helps us connect.
Okay, there's a series of Oscar-winning movies recently that people may be familiar with. Green Book was one of them. Now, Green Book is a racial discrimination tale. The character that is being discriminated against is wildly talented, a world-class pianist. But despite his elevated status in the arts and financially, he still experiences that underdog, misfit, marginalized feeling that does not allow him to fully belong no matter what he does. And then later in the movie, the theme of homosexuality is brought up as another factor that we use to other people. I say we as a society. It's yet another pigeonhole. And so the need to belong in that movie can drive people that do not have racial discrimination or sexual orientation discriminatory behaviors toward them relate to that movie and enjoy it. So that's the theme, where empowerment with a universal touch makes everybody feel connected and better understood. Another one would be Spencer, about Princess Diana. Here is another character, kind of like the King's Speech, that is elevated. It's an aspirational thing to watch a princess. And we watch that and we think, what would it be like to be a princess? But then this particular princess is marginalized. She's bulimic. She's rejected by her husband. She doesn't fit in some way. And so in that way, it becomes an empowerment story that by watching, whether she wins, loses, or in this case dies, we still feel closer to everyone because we feel like her plight is better understood. Her needs are better understood. And so that's where I'm taking, in previous research like neuroscience, there's certain things we know about movies. We know that a driving soundtrack, if you love the songs, that's going to help the movie's success. We know that aesthetics, beautiful costumes, those kinds of things are appealing. But that's the external. So what I'm studying now at Fielding is the internal thoughts that lead to behavior, attitudes, and how to change them. And also movies are one of the most powerful forms of narrative persuasion there is. There's very little, they call it back talking, arguing when you're watching a movie. If you go to see a movie, let me tell you a story. You sit back and you're open to the fact that dinosaurs might fly, or dragons, excuse me, or whatever is the fantasy fiction they're going to present. And so that openness means you're not back talking and arguing with what is presented. You accept it for that time. And so that openness is the beginning of attitude change. And if you can engage people's empathy, their emotions, and give them an experience, they also relate to the lead characters or not lead characters. And as they relate, they put themselves in the shoes of that character. And that opens hearts and minds for attitude change. So movies are very powerful. And that's another reason I'm interested in shaping them. I wouldn't say changing, I would say shaping.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's good for society. You know, we can affect social change this way also.
Right. And so you've identified a couple of really powerful themes, such as belongingness, and you've done a really interesting job of articulating, uh, the psychological principles and phenomena that attract us to these stories and these movies. And it makes me wonder, is this generally known in the industry? Do screenwriters set out um, to develop stories and scripts that invoke these psychological themes, or is it more that they just know what sells and and then rely on people like yourself to develop an understanding of the psychology behind it?
You got a great instinct, Brian. And I know where yours comes from with all your experience. It's true. They do know what sells. And because I've been a producer and an actor, both sides of the camera, I understand that. Yes, good looking people are going to be attractive in a movie. But the thing is that psychological is we're looking for ourselves. We're looking for some clue to our own lives. If some character looks like me or has the same job or lives in the same state, I mean, it could be so many different ways that I can relate to a character. If I can find myself, I feel like I have a place in the world. That goes back to belonging as well. And as a producer, you're taught, well, I need a name so I can fund this movie, so I can ensure this movie. Movies are so expensive. It's very risky to make a movie. And so how do I make sure that I have checked all the boxes to get it funded, to even get it seen? So those factors are still in place. However, the more these types of things are understood as we have evidence, we have research evidence to show you, to support that these things are just as important and may in fact guarantee your success better. I think we're really used to looking at what I call demographic elements. What does the person look like? Are they male or female? Well, it's not binary anymore. So you're leaving people out. If it's just, racial lines being drawn, you're leaving people out because there's a lot of blending in this world. There has been for a long time. So you're right. I thought in the beginning, everything was obvious. And then a friend of mine who also consults for the movie theaters and works for Fielding was telling me that our job is to interpret the data. So I was intimidated that movie studios have very expensive retainers with marketing firms. And they do surveys that are worldwide. I mean, Netflix subscriber base is international. And I thought, how can my little research compete with that? They don't need me. That's what I thought before I came to Fielding. After I came to Fielding, I realized, oh, well, your survey can tell you definitely what's their favorite movie, but it can't tell you why. Usually the answer people give is the first thing that comes to their head anyway. They don't always know why, which I discovered with neuroscience. You can tell by micro expression when someone is responding to something in a movie, even though later they may not remember it or know the exact moment that it happened. So the psychological factors are very, very intrinsic to satisfaction. They may be the first step and the explanation, just like in life, we make emotional decisions and rationalize with intellectual answers later. I think it's the same thing. I think I will always run into the producers who say I need the best looking people. But even I've been an advertising photographer. Oh, this one's more of an illustration. I worked with dancers. And the reason I worked with dancers is because I can hire a model who looks beautiful. But if I hire a dancer that is used to expressing with their bodies, they can make a shape that'll break your heart. You'll look at it and you'll say, oh, that's how I felt. And you get all verklempt because you relate. There's some instinct you have about truth. And so that's what I'm trying to sell, if you will, to movie studios, that it's not just the facts, it's the qualitative nuance of why.
How common is it in the industry for studios or producers to consult psychologists in the development of their products, their movies?
It's actually more common than you would think. I think everyone knows that there are test audiences and focus groups. And like I said, big bucks are spent with market research, both in-house and farmed out, that are mostly surveys. The qualitative part is much more rare, but using a psychologist, I know a lot of people that use psychologists, they don't advertise that they do that. And the other thing is it's a newer specialty. So as it becomes known, the demand is definitely there. It's sort of like social media. I have a degree in mass communications specialized in social media. And social media, that permeates everything now. If you look at the numbers of how many people are on Facebook, LinkedIn, I mean, it permeates our life. So I've had many companies after they found out about my credentials and what I'm working on with fielding that are not movie studios that said, oh, I would love those insights. Because when you become a psychologist in media, or any psychologist at fielding, really, when you get a PhD, people will complain online on Twitter. So all of you students that are watching, you may be worried, oh, it's scary to get a PhD. I have to read so much. Yes, you do have to read. It's a pleasure because it's in your specialty. But it's like becoming a lawyer. You have to know what was done before you. You don't want to recreate the wheel twice. If it's already been done, it's relevant and it's in practice. So you have to know that. And then once you know that, then you can start in on new research. But I'm telling you, just about every company that I have, I know so many people, they all say, oh, well, when are you free? It's not a problem to get hired. I think it's just letting people know what you do and what you know, how you can help them.
I'm going to direct a few questions to the present Angel Burns and the Fielding graduate program.
Okay.
And, just this morning, I was reviewing our curriculum. I was putting together some materials, sets of courses, or templates for how to progress through our program. So I'm looking at course names and course descriptions, and they're all very interesting courses to me.
Yes.
But then, I hear Angel talking about such a rich and diverse professional experience, both as a performer, as a consultant on psychological issues. And I'm trying to put this together in my head. So the question I have is, how do you take what you've done and what you know and apply it in the specific types of courses that we offer? How
Oh,
does your experience affect your performance in your work in your classes? And then how does what you learn in individual classes inform your work?
okay. That's a great question and something I would love to tell any new student. What I loved was that every single course I took here, when we had to do a paper, a project, we were allowed to choose the topic. Sometimes it was narrow, sometimes it was general. There was one that was about um, media, new media in general. And I remember this was when I was first a student, I chose telemedicine. Why? Because the pandemic had hit. And so the only way to see a doctor for a short time was virtually, like this Zoom. And so I had just looked at in another class all the effects of the pandemic on the movie industry. And so no one else in my class was doing it because they were all from diverse backgrounds. But I was able to put what I learned from the telemedicine study towards, hey, we're going to be streaming now. The movie industry can't open the theaters. How does that apply? What does that look like? And what are the costs involved? Not just financially, but experientially for the viewer and for the filmmaker who has to make all this happen and quickly. So that seeded future research projects in other classes. And then another thing that happened was I think we get really siloed in what we're studying. So anyone that knows me, they call me Miss Movie. I am just all about the movies. I love movies like crazy cakes. And so because of that, movies, 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 it can be also a trap because insight comes from outside, from analogy, from sometimes crazy places. There's lots of examples of this, but they're in TED Talks, so I'll leave that. But yeah, I would meet people with very diverse backgrounds. For instance, I would meet people because of fielding and being able to do these virtual classes that I would never meet otherwise. So in one of my classes, there was a general in the military, and he was in charge of, at the time, all of Afghanistan. And the insight he brought, another class had a military person who wrote about terrorism. And at first I was taken aback. I thought my little papers about movies, it seemed so small compared to terrorism. But his paper was brilliant. And I learned from that, and I learned how to think about things in a different way that I would not get if I was surrounded by other filmmakers. So to me, that's a tremendous, huge advantage. Then on top of it, Brian, you keep having these colloquiums for us. We can join in and meet, to me, are fancy, well-known, often cited researchers and authors and leaders in our world, in research in general, and for free, be able to listen and ask questions and learn. One of the examples was Johnny Saldana. Saldana, qualitative researcher, has written many books, teaches all over the globe. And through fielding, I was able to participate in his seminar and talk to him and work with him and do exercises. And it made my research better. And it didn't cost me anything extra. So yeah, I got a lot of examples.
There are a couple of things that you said that really resonate with me. Well, one, thanks for mentioning that about the colloquium series. We do aim to provide our students with exposure to the really interesting work that we are doing at Fielding and really interesting work that others in the field of media psychology are doing at other universities. But
Amazing.
one of
Really.
the things that you mentioned that you've been able to do, which I think is really inspiring, is how you're drawing parallels between completely different industries.
Yeah.
So the telemedicine industry and the movie entertainment, and industry, and you're doing that by uh, uh, breaking them down to the psychological concepts. So same or similar psychological concepts apply in different settings, in different industries, and you're able to port these concepts from one industry to another. And I think that's really useful and really insightful.
I think, that's a big advantage of fielding, that if you go somewhere that's geographically based, you're limited to the people there. Here, when the pandemic hit, we were ready. There was no panic. No, we were slick by comparison when all those other schools, Harvard, Cornell, all of them had to go to virtual teaching. We were very comfortable with it. And the cross-pollination idea, that's not just me. I believe that when you make a path, a plan for your career, for your life, I think you're only allowed to see the first step or two, and then it's kind of fuzzy. I don't know what's next. But the reason is steps 3+ are other people. Other people are going to fuel the path, the choices, the tangents, the lessons, the opportunities. And that's what we get here in spades. In several of my classes, we have people from Ad Fontes Media, which does research on political leanings of all the news outlets. And several of those people that work for the company and those researchers are here at Fielding. And we get all of that information and insight shared with us for free on a regular basis. We get to hear from them. I think that's different than if you read a soundbite in the news or you read something in a book. I get to meet you, Brian, and talk to you about, witnesses and interrogation and get the real stuff from you and be able to ask questions. I don't get that anywhere else. So it's a tremendous advantage. But I think that's how everybody learns and how you get ideas.
I've referred to that in the past as the social capital that we develop
Yes.
along the way. And you have a certain amount of control over your professional destiny, what degrees you pursue, where you pursue them, what courses you take. But the unknown is who you encounter along the way, the friendships, the partnerships that you form, and how you mutually benefit from each other for decades to come.
Absolutely. And I
So
want to say that to the people watching, if anybody wants to, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. If after this you have questions or questions about Fielding, questions about the movies, I'd be thrilled to chat with you that way too.
thank you, Angel. It's very kind.
Mhm.
Let me
Yeah.
stop for a minute, and we have a question. Want to join our conversation?
Well, I was just, I don't know if I've been looking for the information. I can't find it, but I was just wondering where we might be able to find demographic information. I'm always looking for spaces that actually do make space for Indigenous people, and I can't seem to find that with respect to Fielding. I was wondering if you guys could either speak to that or guide me to find out more information.
More information about the demographic profile of our students?
And yes, and I'm specifically looking for Indigenous information.
Sure. I certainly don't have those at the top of my head. If Shannon, if you have that, you could post a link. If not, feel free to post my email, or regardless, post my email address in the chat box and follow up with me. And we'll seek out the information you're looking for if it's not readily available.
I also want to tell you, is it Inez? Okay. I also wanted to tell you that I'm aware there's been research done on Indigenous people here, doctoral research. So more is more, right? Oh, I think you're muted.
Sorry, but it hasn't been done by Indigenous people?
Not in the case that I'm thinking of. but I just know
Okay.
one particular case. For instance, I did a paper on Indian psychology, but it was in India. And that's
Okay.
how I found about the other person who had done native research.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go back to like being invisible. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Angel, we have a few minutes left, and I want to focus on the future, Angel Burns. So where do we go from here?
Well, I'm getting ready for the next Oscar season. Every Oscar season, I see more than 200 movies that are screened, not my own habits as well, but I get to see all the best movies of the year, the contenders, international movies. And so I'm gearing up for that, another award season. I'll be not only a voter, but I'll be interviewing and hosting and filming celebrity interviews about certain roles. So this is always informing part of that. Next, I'm also going to be working on my dissertation starting in January, and that will be, I haven't got the fine specifics of it, but it will also be covering facets of great movies and audience satisfaction, movie features that lead to that. I just finished up some research on creating a new model for audience stages of satisfaction. And I've equated that to the old saying, hook, line, and sinker.
Mhm.
So if you're a fish, as an audience member, what is the hook? What grabs your attention? Without that, the rest never happens, right? So that's the first thing. And then line is what engages you. So what is going to continue to hold your attention? And then sinker is when, okay, you're on board. You're going for this ride. And then the last stage is when the fish is caught. And that's when the fish says, oh, yes, that was one of my favorite movies.
Mm.
And so I have broken down those stages, and psychological theory has fit into them. And well, I don't know if I can show this now. Can I share my screen for just a sec? Would that be okay? Or should I? Hold on.
Yeah, Shannon can. Oh, you can do that now, Angel. Thank you.
Okay. This is just a rough, let's see, this is the one. This is just a rough mock-up that I did last term. Can you see it? It's quite small, but it has the analogies of hook, line, sinker, and caught. And that means attention, engagement, transportation, and gratification. And then I have broken down here all of the components of that, the related theories, with examples of each. So that is what we call grounded theory, which is using research to develop new theories going forward. And then just like with all science, what will happen is more replication of not just my research, but each facet of the theory. So that's what I'm working on research-wise. Other than that, I'll just be continuing to work in the movie industry and talking and writing and sharing what I've learned to consult.
By the way, as I was looking at the model, it's very interesting. The one thing occurred to me is that most fish get away at one stage
Yeah,
or another.
exactly.
So
Exactly. That's very true, Brian.
yeah,
You're on it. And it's easy to break. It's like sales. If you've ever been in sales, it's actually precarious. So I used to be in sales eons ago, also day jobs when I was acting. And I learned that the smallest thing can interrupt the pattern and then the deal's off. So let's see. Oh, those are the demographic chat I just noticed. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was just noticing the chat. I was checking to see if there was a question there, but it's about demographics. So were there any questions? Did anyone have any questions for me? Oh, while I'm waiting for that, pop in if you do. I just wanted to say a really important distinction in going to the movies. We go for gratifications. We have an idea that this movie will give us something. But there's two kinds. There's hedonic, which is enjoyment, pleasure, fun, aesthetics, it's beautiful. And then there's eudaimonic, which has to do with meaning, life's purpose, something it tells us about us and living. And if you look, those are the ones that win Oscars for Best Picture. So mostly dramas, but we also found that comedy thrown into a drama breaks the tension and then heightens it. So dramedies have the best bet going forward.
I think you have a lot to offer the industry. Well, Angel, you've been very generous with your time and your thoughts and experience. In the last couple minutes, is there anything you'd like to say to our prospective students, our audience, about either about fielding or about careers? Any insights you'd like to share before we end?
There's a couple things. One is that I mentioned social media. Being a media psychologist, I would tell everybody watching to keep an eye on that. Everyone is aware and discussing in the news right now how much information about us is owned by Facebook, by other platforms. And psychologists, as well as business, use the data that's out there to scrape and gather insights. I was able to do that for some of my research. So if anyone is interested in that, that is a wide open field, and putting psychology with it is the aha factor. So I studied that in my master's program at another university, but never got the depth of insight that psychology added to it. So I know a lot of people are interested in that, and virtual reality, augmented reality, those types of experiential, technologically supported experiences are also in the movies. They're talking about doing experiential preview trailers instead of just on screen. And now we're able to do that in our home with goggles and with our computers. So there's a lot of research being done, and particularly here at Fielding among my peers. And the teachers here are phenomenal. Everybody here works in the industry and can offer you insights that you may not get or hear anywhere else. So I just think it's all delicious. I mean, if either psychology or media or both, these are our lives. And if you want to learn more, this is a great gang to help you do that. Mind blowing to me. I cannot contain my excitement. So yes, I am the cheerleader for Fielding if ever there was one.
You're a fantastic ambassador for our program and a fantastic representative of one of our students. We
Oh, my
draw
pleasure.
such interesting people, and Angel is fantastic. And thank you so much for
Right.
sharing your thoughts and your time, and we really appreciate it. Patricia, thank you for your very kind comments in the chat box also. So I appreciate everybody showing up. I'll stick around for a few minutes and answer some general questions about the program, and also invite you to another information session where we talk specifically about the master's certificate, PhD program, whichever one or ones interest you. And if you don't have any questions, I'll thank you for showing up and for your interest. Angel, thank you. And Shannon, thank you very much.
Good luck, everybody.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I see Inez said, do you still keep in contact with your cohort? If that means me, absolutely. These are going to be friends for life.
Cool beans. That's what I wanted to know because that's
Oh,
also important to me. So
yeah, no, if you're looking for real connection and not just, I hate to say it, but LinkedIn is introductions and acquaintances for the most part when that happens that way. This is the real thing. So just like if you met with a real friend, this is a real relationship you're building with every teacher, every student. And I heard lots of things before I came here that a PhD will give you an ulcer. It's so stressful. And okay, it's a lot of work, but it's fun. It's what you want. And there's so many people here to help you with it. When I came, I was told this is a student-centered program, and they mean it. And in the media psychology program, I call Brian by his first name. This is just, I mean, I had to get used to that. This is an eminent professional here with tons of experience who earned his degrees. To have that level of casual closeness, I feel pretty lucky to be here and have that.
You're too kind. Ines, also, I'll also mention that I did my graduate work, my master's, my PhD work in the mid 1980s, and I'm still in touch with my many of my former fellow graduate students.
And he's introduced them to me. So, yes.
So, I mean,
it's real.
we really do form professional relationships for life, and we attend professional conferences. You know, and hopefully we'll start doing it again now that we can travel and gather in person. And I've been seeing many of the same colleagues for decades, and it's a really wonderful experience.
Yes, one of I think it was Regina Tuma said that, oh, you'll make friends for life. And it's true. Absolutely true.